The day I came of age, Zhou Hao from the Zhou family sent someone to deliver a letter of annulment. He said he already had someone in his heart and didn't want to let me down through a blind marriage. The world praised him for being affectionate and righteous, a true gentleman. But I was regarded as a disgrace to my family. My name was struck from the clan registry by my uncle, and I was driven out of the house. With no other options, I took the jade pendant left by my mother and set out for the capital. Ding! Royal Story reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. On the day I came of age, it was snowing heavily. Although Zhou Hao, the eldest son of the Zhou family and my betrothed, did not come personally, he sent the elders of the family, thus fulfilling the proper etiquette. For a time, voices of envy surrounded me. Everyone envied my good fortune. As an orphaned girl, I could marry into such a noble and influential family like the Zhou family, and tie the knot with a distinguished gentleman like Zhou Hao. Only the elders from the Zhou family who came wore embarrassed expressions. After deliberating for a long time, they took out a letter written by Zhou Hao himself from their bosom. Seeing the 3 large characters letter of annulment on it, the sounds of envy abruptly ceased. I felt like falling into an ice cellar. I was originally an orphaned girl of the Chu family, living under the care of my uncle in Jade City. My father, originally an inspector of the censorate, was killed by mountain bandits on his way to take up his post. My mother died for love, leaving only me alone. My uncle coveted my father's inheritance, and my aunt was a harsh person. Fortunately, before my parents' deaths, they had arranged my engagement with Zhou Hao, the eldest son of the Zhou family. The Zhou family is a prestigious and noble family with many members holding official positions, including the current vice minister who is the head of the Zhou family. If I could marry into the Zhou family, my uncle and his family could naturally rise to power as well. So although I was under the care of others, I was not treated too harshly. But now, all of this has changed. On the day I came of age, Zhou Hao's letter was delivered from thousands of miles away to annul our engagement. The guests in the hall had different expressions, and my coming-of-age ceremony was hastily concluded. Before they left, I heard them whispering. I said, how could an orphan girl like her enter the eyes of the Zhou family's eldest son? Zhou Hao didn't even come in person. It's clear how much he looks down on her. The former talented girl who was the pride of Jade City, from now on, she might not have a place in the circle of noble ladies. Every word was like a needle pricking at my self-esteem, making me feel deeply humiliated. After sending off the elders of the Zhou family, my uncle and aunt also revealed their true faces. The wind and snow were fierce, cold to the bone. I knelt in front of the ancestral hall, listening to them enumerating my crimes. They said my annulment brought shame to the clan. They said I caused others to gossip, implicating the reputation of the clan's daughters. They said I was a disgrace to the family. I was clear-minded. Humiliating me was a pretense, seizing the inheritance left by my father was the real intention. The annulment was just an excuse. A strong matron pinched my hand, forcing me to press my handprint. My uncle struck my name from the clan registry. And that was the end of it. I was driven out of the house. I still wore the luxurious yet thin winter dress I had prepared for my coming-of-age ceremony. My aunt stood at the door pretending to be compassionate, throwing me a pouch of broken silver mixed with stones. Onlookers pointed and whispered, their foul language incessant. After they left, I stood on the long street, looking back at the vast Jade City. It rarely snows in Jade City. Snow fell silently, hurried people passing by. Here, there was no place for me to settle down. Looking back again, I held an unremarkable jade pendant in my hand. It was left to me by my mother. She said if I was in trouble, I could seek an old friend in the capital. I walked slowly along the street, my resolve growing stronger. Farewell to the falling snow, sent off by the long wind. The world is vast. There will always be a place for me. The further north I went, the colder it got. Such a harsh journey took me a month to walk. By the time I reached the capital, I was in a disheveled state. Looking up at the tall gate, I handed the jade pendant to the gatekeeper. I wish to see the Prime Minister. The gatekeeper took the jade pendant, his face changing at its coarse quality, not even looking up, he sneered. Where did this cheap trinket come from? You think you can enter the minister's residence? There are countless people trying to curry favor with the minister in this capital. Should I introduce each one? Get lost! I was rudely shoved to the ground by him. Years ago, my mother had shown kindness to the owner of this jade pendant. At that time, he was down and out, so naturally, the token he gave wasn't anything prestigious. Now that I took it out, even the gatekeeper looked down on it. Not knowing what to do, a carriage rumbled behind me. A slender jade-like hand emerged from the window, and a leisurely voice, commanding without anger, spoke. Is this how you treat distinguished guests? A person alighted from the carriage. Tall and slender, with delicate features, draped in a white fox fur cloak, wearing a scarlet official robe underneath, as noble as pearls and jade. This person was Gu Qian, the top scholar from a humble background, now the influential prime minister. I didn't expect him to be so young. The negligent gatekeeper was dragged away by suddenly appearing guards. He played with the jade pendant in his hand. At that moment, I, wearing a set of old and new men's clothes, covered in mud, my face once praised as exceptionally beautiful now smudged with dirt. I stood up from the ground and met his gaze. He chuckled lightly, smart. I understood what he meant. As a woman, I would never have been able to reach the capital. I changed into men's clothes and purposely made myself look disheveled, thus making the journey without danger. He had someone take me to wash and get settled. When we met again, he had changed into light blue regular clothes, no longer as sharp as the first time we met, and exuded a lazy, unrestrained temperament. Seeing me appear in women's clothing, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He then put on a half-smiling expression and said straightforwardly, I have already heard about your situation. I'm giving you two choices. 1. Marry me and use my influence to return to the Chu family in J City and reclaim what you've lost. 2. Go into hiding. I will arrange a new identity for you so you can live the life you want wherever you choose. You have half a day to think it over. I replied quickly. No need, I'll choose the third option. On the journey to the capital over the past month, I had already decided on my path. I want to enter the palace and become a female official. In our dynasty, female officials are established in the harem to manage the attire, living expenses, and other matters of the female members of the palace. Most female officials are noblewomen from the capital, with talent being the foremost requirement and looks coming second. All female officials need to be recommended by court officials and undergo an examination before they can be appointed. Returning to my hometown for revenge is not my intention, nor do I wish to live a peaceful life. What I want is to stand in the halls of power. To thoroughly voice the grievances of being rejected from marriage and being driven out of my home and seek justice. Gu Qian, hearing my choice, showed appreciation in his cold eyes. The daughter of the Chu family indeed has ambition. I was recommended under the identity of Gu Qian's fiancé. Regarding this identity, Gu Qian specially explained. Entering the palace as a female official involves strict scrutiny. Only those close to the recommender can be selected. I hope you don't mind this arrangement. I was surprised, as I wasn't aware of this rule before. But knowing he was doing it for my sake, I didn't say much more. With Gu Qian's recommendation and my talent, the examination was naturally not an issue. Half a month later, I entered the palace. Gu Qian came specially to see me off. He handed me the jade pendant again and instructed that if I encountered any trouble, I could send someone to find him. I accepted his kind gesture. In fact, I was puzzled, not knowing when my mother had had any interactions with such high-ranking officials. And what kind of gratitude could make him so dedicated? But since he didn't volunteer this information, I did not ask. The teaching nanny came to urge me. I bid him a solemn farewell and turned to leave. It was deep winter, and the weather was cold. Snowflakes fell from the sky, seeming to drape a thin veil over the red walls and green tiles around us. Holding an umbrella, I walked side by side with other female officials entering the palace when suddenly, a voice came from behind. Prime Minister, please wait. I am Zhou Hao of the Zhou family. I stopped abruptly. In fact, I had never met Zhou Hao. Our marriage engagement was purely arranged by our parents and the matchmaker's words. Not long after the engagement was set, my father left the capital to serve as an official in another place. Due to his position, he had to travel to various states and counties for inspection, and my mother and I went with him. I only returned to the capital once, following my father. But on that occasion, I caught a cold and had a high fever, falling into a coma and unable to meet Zhou Hao. Therefore, when Zhou Hao said in the letter of annulment that ours was a blind marriage and dumb betrothal, it was not without reason. But that was not the fundamental reason. I always knew Zhou Hao had someone in his heart. Many years ago, on the night of the Lantern Festival, Zhou Hao saw a girl dancing under the plum tree. The east wind at night blew 1,000 flowers, and more, like rain, scattered stars. The brilliant stars, the red falling flowers, the white snow, and the girl's dance steps all fell into Zhou Hao's heart. He was so stunned that he didn't walk forward. By the time he regained his senses, the crowd was packed, shoulder to shoulder. The girl was nowhere to be found. Zhou Hao was young and impetuous, unconventional. He searched for that girl high and low, regardless of the engagement. But despite his efforts, he never found her. However, this matter caused quite a stir. The idle chatter of noble sons became fodder for people's gossip over tea. Especially for a prestigious figure like Zhou Hao. Everyone marveled at his unrestrained, romantic disposition. Some even joked, "What girl?" The flower fairy descended on the Lantern Festival. Did Zhou Gongzi see a flower fairy? Such a story might be a charming anecdote for him. But for me, it was a different matter. Zhou Hao, ignoring his fiancée to grandly search for another woman, was a slap in my face and in the face of the Chu family. The Zhou family even apologized to my father, who was in the capital at that time. But my father was busy caring for me, who had caught a cold from being too cool, and thus didn't make a fuss. Now, meeting Zhou Hao at the palace gate, I turned my head to see what this man who had twice humiliated me looked like. But all I saw was a refined, upright figure in the falling snow. The rim of his umbrella hid half his face. Snowflakes fluttered, forming an insurmountable curtain. A female official beside me noticed my gaze and said with a faint smile, "That first son of the aristocratic family is not someone you or I can hope for. He is excellent but always in pursuit of an illusory person. Instead of focusing on him, you should focus on your life in the palace." I came to my senses and thanked the female official. I then turned away from Zhou Hao and walked into the palace in the opposite direction. Women who enter the palace as officials must first learn the palace rules and then be assigned to the various consorts. When my parents were alive, I was also raised carefully as a noble lady. After they passed away, I never let up in my training to become a qualified madam of the Zhou family. Therefore, I don't find the palace rules and etiquette difficult. After completing my training, I was assigned to Ying Palace to instruct Princess Qingyan. The current empress has a son and a daughter. The eldest son, Song Minyuan, was made the crown prince at birth. And the young Princess Qingyan, now in her prime, is highly favored by the emperor and empress. Ying Palace is where all the female officials want to go, but unexpectedly, it fell to me. While astonished, I knew it was Gu Qian who had made arrangements for me. I became even more curious about the kindness my mother had shown him back then. That even sheltering and recommending me wasn't enough, he had gone to such lengths for me. At this moment, a maid brought word that Gu Qian wanted to meet me. It was a long walk to the palace gate. Not wanting to keep him waiting, I wrapped my fox fur tightly and followed the guide closely. As I approached the palace gate, I saw Gu Qian from afar. He was kicking a stone, looking quite bored, with no one else around. He must have just finished the morning court session, and his crimson official robe stood out vividly against the vast snow, though he looked a bit thin. I quickened my pace and, after some hesitation, handed him my hand warmer. He paused slightly and accepted it with a smile. Having stood in the cold wind for a long time, his face was flushed, and his smile added a touch of beauty. I gathered my thoughts and asked why he wanted to see me. He handed me a piece of paper. This records Princess Qingyan's temperament, habits, likes, and dislikes. You might find it useful. I took it, surprised, unable to contain my curiosity anymore. I looked up into his eyes. Gu Qian, what kindness did my mother show you for you to be so diligent? The wind and snow gradually stopped. Gu Qian lowered his gaze to me, his deep voice slowly uttering 4 words, "She saved my life." He then frowned slightly and asked, "Do you not remember?" I was puzzled, unsure of what he meant. Gu Qian's expression seemed a mix of helplessness and relief. He sighed softly. And so, he began to recount an old story. For years ago, my father brought my mother and me back to the capital for his duties. On the night of the Lantern Festival, I begged my mother to take me out to see the lanterns. In the bustling streets, we encountered the then struggling Gu Qian. The Gu family were once prominent officials in the court but fell into ruin due to treachery. His father had died miserably, his mother was gravely ill. Gu Qian studied for exams while selling his writing and paintings on the streets to earn money for medicine. That day, ruffians destroyed his stall and stole the money he had painstakingly saved for his mother's treatment, beating him badly. My mother pitied him and, remembering the old ties between the Chu family and the Gu family, decided to help him. She expected no return. But the stubborn youth blocked the carriage and, under the flowing lantern light, his unyielding spine was clear to see. He left behind a jade pendant, which, according to him, was fake. The real jade pendant was a family heirloom, the only thing left by his wrongfully killed father. But due to his mother's illness, he had no choice but to pawn it. Fearing his mother would worry, he had a replica made. Though the duplicate was fake, it could still serve as a token. The youth vowed under the shimmering stars, "When I succeed in the future, I will repay you." My mother, left with no choice, accepted. She did not anticipate that this act of kindness would be remembered for so long. This jade pendant later helped her daughter escape dire straits. Later, Gu Qian passed the imperial exams with flying colors. In court, he cleared his family's name and regained their honor. The emperor, to make amends, granted him high office and wealth. With his talent and methods, he gained the emperor's favor and quickly ascended to the position of prime minister. This was a later development. At the moment, after hearing his account, I suddenly understood. A shy smile appeared on my face. That night, I caught a cold from the chill and was comatose for several days. The events that occurred during that time are a bit hazy to me. It wasn't intentional forgetfulness. He hesitated, seemingly wanting to say something. Under the plum tree, you. A gust of wind interrupted his words. He finally just nodded slightly. Never mind. It's cold, you should head back early. I bowed and bid him farewell, not dwelling on his unfinished words. I successfully entered Ying Palace. Princess Qing Yan was neither arrogant nor rude, she was humble, eager to learn, and gentle. We quickly became well acquainted in just a few days. I guided her in female studies and virtues daily, and we became good friends with shared interests. One day, as we chatted about the selection process for female officials, I asked her casually, "Why is it that those chosen as female officials must be close to their recommender?" To my surprise, she was shocked. "Who told you that? Female officials only need to be recommended by someone and have a clean background. There's no requirement about closeness." I was taken aback and covered it with a casual remark, but my heart couldn't find peace. Why did Gu Qian lie? Soon, the Lantern Festival approached. Princess Qing Yan wanted to perform a dance before the emperor and empress. She found the court dances too rigid, so she sought me out. At the palace assessment, my dance skills were what impressed everyone the most. In the past, I traveled around with my father and once met Lady Lin. Lady Lin was renowned for her sword dances, and I was lucky to become her disciple. Qing Yan asked me for a favor, so I did not refuse. She said there was a serene and elegant place behind the imperial garden where the two of us could practice diligently. I followed her and found it was a plum grove. Bright red plum blossoms bloomed on the branches, adorned with white snow. The contrast enhanced their beauty. I gladly agreed. I only thought it was a place for practice, so I did not foresee. I did not foresee that in this world, there could be such coincidences. At a certain moment, because of a certain person, myriad fates could become entangled. In a place unknown to me, the Crown Prince Song Minyuan put down the memorial and said to the two people in front of him, "Lord Gu, Lord Zhou, the night is pleasant today, come with me to the imperial garden for a walk." The bright moon hung high, and the lamps had just been lit. Many glazed lamps were scattered among the plum trees. The fish seemed to swim in the air, like a dream. I danced in the plum grove at the princess's command, with a plum branch as a sword, pointing at myriad flowers. In splendid attire and with graceful moves, I was like a dragon in flight. Everyone around me was stunned. Even passers-by stopped to watch. When the dance ended, snow and red flowers fell from the tree. Spinning in the air, they landed in my black hair. Suddenly, applause came from afar. Wonderful! Marvelous! I turned around and saw Crown Prince Song Minyuan looking at me with bright eyes, his gaze locked on me. Behind him was Gu Qian, with a look of admiration. Besides them, there was another person. It was a handsome man with a gentle demeanor. Tall and elegant, dressed in fine clothes, like snow on bamboo and the moon in the clouds. Unlike the other two who merely praised my dance moves, his surprise carried an unmistakable excitement. As if a long-held wish had finally come true. He nearly rushed through the crowd to come before me. Is it really you? It's truly you. I was as puzzled as everyone else. Lord Zhou, what do you mean by it's you? Do you know Lady Chu? Princess Qing Yan eagerly asked. With her reminder, the man quickly bowed to me. I am Zhou Hao of the Zhou family. 4 years ago, during the Lantern Festival, I saw you dance under a plum tree. And I have been captivated ever since, unable to forget you. Seeing you again now, I must apologize for any rudeness. His eyes were sincere and filled with an indescribable fervor. But I was rooted to the spot by that name. The Zhou family, Zhou Hao. It brought back memories of the coming-of-age ceremony a few months ago. The letter that humiliated me, leading me to the brink, was signed by Zhou Hao. Now, standing before me, he was earnest and passionate. But I found it absurd. How ironic, fate's cruel joke. The person who haunted Zhou Hao's dreams, whom he couldn't forget, was me. Really? It's Lady Chu, what a coincidence. Princess Qing Yan's voice brought me back to reality. The crown prince also smiled and said, "Is that so? Congratulations, Lord Zhou, for finding Lady Chu, fulfilling your long-standing wish." Zhou Hao's grand search for his beloved and his recent broken engagement were known even in the royal circles. Only Gu Qian remained unmoved, standing still with a peculiar expression. But everyone else's curiosity was piqued. The most outstanding noble son, willing to defy family and tradition to find a girl. Everyone wondered who she was. What kind of person could she be? All eyes turned to me, wondering why I was so fortunate. To have a devoted and passionate man from a noble family chasing after me, ensuring luxury and affection. What could be better? They all thought I would gladly accept. But under their surprised gazes, I took a step back. "Zhou Hao, I am Chu Xiao Xiao." I looked at him and spoke earnestly. "I am Chu Xiao Xiao. When my parents were alive, they raised me meticulously. I excelled in both talents and virtues, known as the foremost noble lady of J City. My abilities rivaled anyone's. Yet, everyone praised my engagement to Zhou Hao. Since our betrothal, words like lucky and fortunate often reached my ears. As if the books I pored over and the shoes I wore out from dancing didn't matter. My true fate was tied to him. At first, I was indignant. Then I realized it was true. Even if I remained the brilliant, talented girl, merely being repudiated by him brought scorn and exile from my family. Now, upon learning that I was the one he loved, abandoning all four, admiration returned to me. But I no longer wanted to be bound to him. "Zhou Hao, I am Chu Xiao Xiao." So, I said my name. The world only knows that Zhou Hao is engaged to a girl from the Chu family, but they don't know who the girl is. However, Zhou Hao surely understands the significance of this name. Sure enough, after a slight daze, his face changed. It was like running with all his might in the darkness to chase the light, only to find that the light he was chasing had always been shining behind him. In his surprise, he was also bewildered and at a loss. "You, how come?" He had too many questions but didn't know how to start. And as I mentioned the past, I could already speak of it calmly. After receiving the letter of annulment, I left the Chu family, heading all the way north to the capital. Fortunately, someone took care of me, and I was able to enter the palace. Zhou Hao opened his mouth, guilt appearing on his face. When I spoke of these things casually, the hardships of the journey did not need to be mentioned, and he naturally thought of them. Had I been able to stay comfortably in the Chu family, why would I have left? And moreover, the capital and J City are 1,000 miles apart. How much suffering would a weak woman like me have to endure to arrive safely? Sorry. Zhou Hao lowered his eyes. He had been smart and talented since he was young. All his life he was proud, admired, never faced setbacks. So, his actions were always unconventional. He did what he wanted, and pursued what he chose. For his marriage, he didn't want to follow the example of his fathers and uncles with multiple wives. He just wanted to find someone he liked and spend his life with her. For years ago, during the Lantern Festival, he fell in love at first sight with a girl. Everyone said that who he was desperately searching for was a figment of his imagination. But he believed it. So he rebelled against the family arrangement, defied worldly views. He resisted as much as he could. Like a general on the battlefield, drawing a bow and shooting arrows, he fought against a 100-year-old family on his own. He won. He thought he had achieved victory. However, he never thought that the arrow he shot would inadvertently hurt innocent people. And years later, it hit himself. Straight in the forehead. Sorry. Zhou Hao said again. When he raised his eyes, they were filled with the bitter reluctance of being so tricked by fate. He recalled the amazement of seeing a girl dance under the plum tree for the first time. A moment of distraction led to a lifetime of missed opportunities. But even so, he did not want to easily let go. You know, I've been looking for you for a long time. Before he could finish, I interrupted. I know, but you should also understand that I was down with a cold that day. So even though you searched far and wide, I did not realize it was me you were looking for. Later, I fell into a fevered coma and did not remember much about that day, including the dance under the tree. Therefore, while I knew you were searching, I didn't know it was me you were looking for. At this, I paused slightly. A chill spread through my heart. Regrets in this world always come like this. Zhou Hao's face turned pale, almost collapsing. I had said everything there was to say, and after bidding farewell to Song Minyuan and Qing Yan, I turned to leave. Wait. Gu Qian called out to me. He walked over and placed a small hand warmer in my hand. It was the one I had given him earlier. It's cold and you should take it slow on the road. I paused, okay. I bowed to him and turned away. Behind me, I heard Song Minyuan's meaningful question. Has Minister Gu known Miss Chu for a long time? Gu Qian's voice was firm even in the wind and snow. Miss Chu is my fiancée. There were whispers of surprise among the crowd. I smiled slightly. I walked into the snow, a faint warmth spreading from my hand, and my heart didn't feel so cold anymore. What happened that night quickly spread, and the matter between Zhou Hao and me was the talk of the palace. Many people also mentioned my relationship with Gu Qian. Walking along the road, I saw meaningful glances everywhere. I ignored them. I thought the storm would pass in a few days, but it lasted for half a month and even intensified. Princess Qing Yan explained the reason to me. Zhou Hao is of noble character and admirable family background. You have no idea how many noble girls want to marry him, but he has turned them all down and insisted on searching for you. Naturally, everyone resents you. Moreover, the Prime Minister is also a paragon of virtue. After you broke off your engagement with Zhou Hao, you've arranged to marry him. People are calling you a seductress. I felt helpless. Not to mention Gu Qian. I never thought that even after I annulled the engagement with Zhou Hao, I would still attract trouble because of him. And it wasn't a small trouble. Soon, I received an invitation from the Zhou family. It was personally sent into the palace by the Zhou family's matriarch. As a female officer, I also had days off. Coincidentally, it was the Zhou matriarch's birthday, and she invited me to the Zhou residence for a banquet. Holding the invitation, I pondered in my heart. Seeing my hesitation, Princess Qing Yan came over. You must go. The Zhou matriarch is a senior after all, and considering the previous engagement between your two families. If you don't go, it would be a breach of etiquette and an insult to the Zhou family. In the future, you would not be able to make a place for yourself among the nobility of the capital. I sighed. That was indeed the reasoning. My only concern was that this might not be an ordinary banquet, but a feast intended to criticize and humiliate me. You don't have to worry too much. I will inform my brother, the crown prince, and accompany you. If anyone dares to bully you, I will stand up for you. The emperor, bedridden for years, and the empress almost never appeared due to taking care of him. Now the crown prince managed the government. Qin Yan patted her chest, full of righteous zeal. I glanced at her. This girl clearly wants to watch the excitement herself. But I was still very grateful for her intention. On my day off, I first returned to the Gu residence. Gu Qian seemed to know I was coming to find him and had been waiting in the residence for some time. I didn't beat around the bush and got straight to the point. During the selection of female officials, why did you lie to me, saying that only those recommended by influential people could be selected? Sweet soup was boiling on the stove. The rolling tea water created a mist, making his expression hazy in the vapor. Looking closely, his face seemed a little red. But he spoke directly. Haven't you already guessed it? I have feelings for you. Letting you enter the palace as my fiancé was to prevent the nobles in the palace from getting ideas about you. Hearing him speak so plainly, I felt a bit uneasy as well. From his attitude towards me over this time, I had vaguely guessed it too. But I still had doubts. We've only known each other for a short while, how can you say you have feelings for me? My tone was questioning. He stared at me for a long time, then sighed. You don't remember, so you don't know. The person who saw you dance under the plum tree years ago wasn't just Zhou Hao. It was also me. For years ago, during the Lantern Festival night, a destitute Gu Qian set up a small stall in the lantern market to write and paint to raise money for his mother's medical treatment. But it wasn't long before the stall was destroyed by local ruffians. Amid the jubilant crowds, his anger, sadness, and pain made him stand out starkly. Sitting among the scattered paintings and calligraphy, his face was filled with resentment and confusion. Until he heard a voice. Mother, this young man is so pitiful, let's help him. He looked up and saw a radiant face. It was like a beam of light in the chaos, illuminating his dark world. During their conversation, he learned her name was Chu Xiao. The noblewoman who accompanied her sent someone home to fetch money, saving him at his most desperate moment. While waiting, the girl handed him her tonghulu. Don't be sad, brother. I've learned a new dance, let me perform it for you to cheer you up. Snow began to fall. In the lantern market, under the plum tree, snowflakes danced down. She danced spiritedly with a plum branch. Immortal and unchanging, a glance lasting a lifetime. After laying things bare with Gu Qian, our relationship became ambiguous. On the birthday of the Zhou family matriarch, I personally embroidered a longevity picture as a birthday gift. Following Qin Yan into the hall, I could feel occasional gazes upon me. Turning my head, I saw Zhou Hao, Gu Qian, and others at the banquet. Even Crown Prince Song Minyuan was here. The head of the Zhou family was the vice minister, and the empress was his sister. So it wasn't against protocol for Song Minyuan and Qin Yan to come as juniors to celebrate. However, my brother also came to join the fun, Qin Yan whispered in my ear. I was speechless. The Zhou family matriarch sat at the head seat, displaying an air of elegance and dignity. Her gaze toward me was slightly sharp. Entering the hall with the princess, I could feel scrutinizing glances from all around. At first, everyone was reserved. But soon, a discordant voice arose. So this is the top talent lady in J City? Seeing her today, she's not much. Far inferior compared to the top talent in our capital. I looked up to see a young woman. Her brows tilted upward, and her face was tender, clearly pampered and spoiled. From others' conversations, I learned her identity. Zhou family's legitimate daughter, Zhou Shanshan. Shanshan. Mind your manners. Zhou Hao scolded sternly. Zhou Shanshan pouted and retorted. I didn't say anything wrong. Dancing is just for entertainment, how does that make her talented? She's no match for Sister Sue's skills in all the arts. Saying this, she walked over to another woman and affectionately took her arm. Following her gaze, I saw that woman, graceful and poised, with a touch of aloofness in her demeanor. That's Su Wan, the the daughter of the Grand Tutor and recognized as the top talent in the capital, especially skilled in chess, Qing Yan whispered in my ear. I had heard this name before. It was said that at the age of 10, she cracked Master Wu Wang's exquisite chess game, becoming famous. Su Wan is the niece of the Zhou matriarch and Zhou Hao's childhood friend. Initially, the Zhou matriarch wanted to arrange a marriage between her and Zhou Hao. But then the head of the Zhou family arranged a marriage with your father instead. However, the Zhou matriarch hasn't given up on this match, so Su Wan often comes to the Zhou residence. Originally, after Zhou Hao broke the engagement, Su Wan was the most hopeful candidate to marry him. But then you suddenly appeared, disrupting their plans, which is one reason for today's hostility towards you. Princess Qing Yan gossiped beside me, and I listened carefully, distracted for a while. Then, I noticed Zhou Shanshan's sharp gaze directed at me. Miss Chu, do you dare to compete with Sister Su? The crowd's attention shifted back to me. I saw the provocative and mocking looks in the eyes of the noblewomen. Now I fully understood where this malice stemmed from. It wasn't just because of Zhou Hao. It was also because recently, I had been in the spotlight, despite being an orphan from another region, my reputation surpassing these noblewomen. Naturally, they were not willing to accept it. An invisible competition had begun. What's the use of all these talents for the so-called title of top talent? I suddenly recalled the times traveling with my father. I saw the charming green mountains and the majestic flowing waters. So I stood at the bow of the boat, unfolded the paper, and created a painting of the picturesque landscape in one go. It was obviously an excellent piece, but my father's gaze at me was filled with grief. Xiao Xiao, if only you were a boy. At that time, I did not understand the deep meaning, thinking it was my father's regret that I could not carry on the family lineage. But now I understand. Be it myself, Su Wan, or all the noble ladies present. We are full of talent, only to outshine others and then marry into a good family. I stood up with a gentle smile on my lips. In that case, let's compete. We were competing in chess. A space was cleared in the hall to set up the chessboard, with guests watching on the side. Su Wan and I sat facing each other. Raising my hand, I placed the first piece. As the game progressed, the guests began to whisper. Zhou Shanshan's voice was particularly loud. I told you, how can she compare to Sister Su? Look at her lagging behind step by step, she is far worse than Sister Su. Her words drew a chorus of agreement. But strangely, Su Wan's expression was not relaxed, rather her brows were tightly knit. I, however, was unhurried. With each move, the situation grew more intense. In the end, Su Wan placed 2 pieces on the board and sighed, I lost. The competition came to an end. Zhou Shanshan's clamor stopped abruptly, disbelief evident on her face. How could she lose? Sister Su was clearly in a good position, just a few more moves and she would. Shanshan. Don't be rude. Come here. The matriarch of the Zhou family stopped Zhou Shanshan. Her gaze fell on me again, no longer as piercing as before. My performance had finally caught her eye. I turned my head to look around and found that the noble ladies who met my gaze automatically looked away. Only Gu Qian and Zhou Hao met my eyes calmly. Gu Qian's eyes were full of admiration, while Zhou Hao's gaze, besides admiration, held more regret. He regretted that fate had played a trick on him. He had missed such an outstanding girl. After the competition, the attitudes of those noble ladies towards me completely changed. They had finally accepted me. Su Wan's arrogance in her eyes was gone, and she was quite friendly towards me. In our conversation, I was amazed that she was not only talented but also well-versed in matters of the state and the nation. It was not just her, but many other noble ladies were the same. Seeing my astonishment, she smiled. Ladies from families like ours, when we marry in the future, not only must we be good matriarch of the house, but most importantly, we must help our husbands, be a capable assistant, so we have deliberately learned these things. As she spoke, a trace of sorrow appeared on her face. Even if we have profound insights, we can only remain behind the scenes, making contributions for others. I contemplated her words. The birthday banquet ended. After saying goodbye to everyone, Gu Qian waited for me outside the Zhou residence. I boarded the carriage and he brought me a cup of hot tea. Holding the cup, I did not drink. "What's on your mind?" he asked me. I looked at him seriously. "Do you think a woman entering the court, how possible is it?" In my conversation with Suwon, I had this feeling. Previously, in J City, my goal was also to be a good matriarch of the Zhou family. But when I was driven out of the house, not only the Zhou family, but all the prominent families in J City avoided me like the plague. In the cold wind, I walked into a clothing store. I exchanged my luxurious clothes, worn during my coming-of-age ceremony, for a set of men's clothes and a bowl of hot soup. In my idle chat with the shopkeeper, I told her I was heading to the capital. I will never forget her expression at that time. She said, "For a delicate lady like me, alone, it was absolutely impossible." Not to mention the dangerous journey, there were also the treacherous hearts of people. Matchmakers, black shops, those with ill intentions were countless. If it were a man, it might be possible. But I did it. On the journey north, I indeed suffered much but also saw much. Not the comfortable travel I had with my father. I exhausted my mind and energy and finally arrived. My mindset had already changed along the way. At first, I only wanted to tell the world about my grievances and reclaim my father's estate. But now I found my own path. A path to ascend the halls of power. Gu Qian listened to my words, and his deep eyes sparkled like stars. Very difficult. He was straightforward. But then he added, "But if you want to do something, just go ahead. If you need my help, just ask." Such unreserved trust warmed my heart slightly. Since my parents passed, I had been used to being alone. But life is long and lonely, having someone to accompany me didn't seem too bad. After making my decision, my first stop was to find Princess Qingyan. With Princess Qingyan accompanying me, I then met Crown Prince Song Minyuan. As expected, after hearing my appeal, Song Minyuan's face showed that he thought I was daydreaming. Surprise mixed with contempt. I was not angry. I presented the political essays written by Suwon and others. He took them and quickly browsed through them, his face gaining a few traces of seriousness. But he still shook his head in the end. Indeed, there are some ideas, but for a woman to enter the court, it violates the ancestral system, it is absolutely impossible. I argued my case with him. "Your Highness, the court is filled with so many holding their positions without merit, wouldn't you consider capable women over them?" The emperor was critically ill, and his ascension to the throne was a foregone conclusion. A new emperor should select and employ the capable. Song Minyuan did not relent in the end, but there was more contemplation in his eyes. The result was within my expectations. If the goal could be achieved with just a few words, it would be too easy. In the days to come, during my breaks, I often went to visit Suwon. While in the palace, I used my position as an excuse to frequently drag Qingyan to see Song Minyuan. Occasionally, I would discuss current affairs with him and express my views. As time went by, Song Minyuan's gaze towards me finally lost its disdain, replaced by recognition and admiration. I let out a long sigh of relief. This period of effort was finally not in vain. However, the matter of establishing female officials in the court was still not working out. "Even if I recognize your talents, the court ministers do not agree. If women are to stand in the court, the people of the world need to see your value," Song Minyuan hinted. After returning, I kept pondering the deeper meaning behind Song Minyuan's words. Letting the world see the value of women is indeed the most important for women to stand in the court. But the problem is, women cannot participate in the imperial examination to become officials, so how can their value be demonstrated? I furrowed my brows deep in thought. Just when I thought things were at an impasse, something happened. As the spring was warming up, frequent rains had caused flooding in the south, turning farmland to ruin and leaving the people destitute. A massive influx of refugees had poured into the capital, and I felt a surge of hope and opportunity perhaps. I contacted Suwon and other noblewomen to discuss disaster relief strategies together. The daughter of the Grand Tutor was well versed in history. I can list effective historical measures for controlling water. The daughter of the Vice Minister of Works was familiar with the geography of mountains and rivers. I will map out the disaster-stricken areas. I will record everything. I understand medicine and can offer some prescriptions to prevent ailments. Everyone contributed their ideas enthusiastically. However, the court would surely discuss funding, water control, and supervision. We needed to come up with something different. I learned household management from my mother and discovered that our storage room is filled with old clothes. Mother says every household is the same. These clothes and items are useless if left in the house, so why not mobilize each household to donate them to the refugees? Reputation is important to people, so we can set up a registry under the court's name to commend officials and merchants who donate. And post-disaster, we need to prevent epidemics. Finally, Su Wan and I coordinated to compile a comprehensive disaster relief manual with everyone's collective efforts. I carefully packed it up and brought it into the palace. Song Minyuan had been overworked for days due to the flood disaster. Seeing the manual, his eyes lit up, and he eagerly began to flip through it. I knew then that the matter was successful. Perhaps most of the content had already been suggested by the court officials. But matters like household storages are better known to women who manage the inner household. This might seem trivial, but many small things can amount to big achievements. Our manual would only be more thorough. There might be shortcomings, but we could identify and address them and perfect the plan through joint discussion. Song Minyuan subdued his expression and seriously looked at me. I will present this manual to the ministers and will not hide your contributions. But have you thought about how many people's interests would be harmed if I really established female officials? If the ministers continue to oppose, what will you do then? I lowered my eyes, my thoughts churning. I understood what he meant. Even if we contributed greatly to the nation, there are too many greedy wolves, and the rewards might not come to us. Miss Chu, you should know that there is no fairness in this world. Even if you strive for it, the result may not be good. Song Minyuan's words echoed in my ears. I stepped out of the hall and stood on the steps. Looking at the layers of palace walls, like mountains, I stepped forward without hesitation. I am not seeking fairness. I am merely seeking an opportunity. Song Minyuan was right. After discussions among the ministers, the disaster relief manual was quickly implemented. In a short time, the disaster was alleviated, and the refugees were resettled. When it came time to reward, he did not shy away from mentioning that the good strategies came from the inner chambers of women. And he tentatively proposed the idea of establishing female officials in the court. As expected, he faced opposition from the ministers. When the accompanying eunuch brought me the news, although I had anticipated it, I couldn't help but feel disappointed. Returning to the Gu family estate, I sought advice from Gu Qian. He had been in the officialdom for many years and understood the stakes involved. He slowly analyzed it for me. There are two types of officials, talented ones selected through the imperial examination and mediocre ones chosen by noble families. If the crown prince establishes female officials, it won't affect the talented ones. But it will threaten those who entered officialdom through money and connections. The court positions are limited, and you would be taking their place. And these people come from noble families, so those who oppose you are likely from noble families as well. Finally, he gave me an idea to find a person Zhou Hao. The Zhou family is the head of noble families, and their leader is also the vice minister in the court. If they agree, the crown prince will support it, and the other noble families won't be able to stir up trouble. Gu Qian's words made sense. As the most prominent heir, Zhou Hao held a significant position in the Zhou family and the hearts of scholars across the land. If he were willing to help me, my predicament would be resolved. After careful consideration for a few days, I still didn't know how to approach him. Our relationship was rather complicated. To my surprise, before I went to find him, I heard that he wrote an article praising the women who contributed significantly to the disaster relief. And the Zhou family leader, the vice minister, also agreed to the establishment of female officials. Hearing this, I was stunned for a moment before letting out a sigh. I instructed my servants to prepare the carriage and headed to the Zhou estate. When I arrived at the Zhou mansion, it started to rain. Zhou Hao stood under the corridor, watching the raindrops fall to the ground, splashing up water droplets. It had only been a few days, but he seemed to have lost a lot of weight. I walked over and thanked him. He gave a bitter smile. Consider it compensation for the harm I did to you before. At this point, there was nothing more to say. I stood up to leave. However, just as I opened my umbrella and stepped out, he suddenly spoke. Miss Chu, if I do my best to make amends for the rest of my life, do we still have a chance? Raindrops fell on the oil paper umbrella, making a pitter-patter sound. I only asked him one question. Zhou Hao, on the day you called off the engagement, why didn't you come in person? My mother was sick that day. He stopped halfway through his words. If he had come in person that year, he would have recognized me long ago. And there wouldn't have been such regret. But fate is like that. What more could be said? Half a year later, the former emperor passed away, and the new emperor ascended the throne. The new emperor, Song Minyuan, selected wise and capable people and first established the position of female minister, allowing women to participate in politics. Among those participating in politics were me, Su Wan, and other noblewomen. I stood in the court, reporting to the new emperor about my uncle's evil deeds of embezzling my father's family property, asking for a fair investigation. The new emperor agreed. I could hardly contain my excitement. The grievances of the past were finally repaid today. The long and arduous journey I had gone through finally had a good result. After the court session, I walked side by side with Gu Qian. Spring breeze brushed our faces, and the sun shone brightly in the sky. Actually, I feel very fortunate. He suddenly spoke. What? I didn't understand his meaning. I'm very fortunate that Zhou Hao called off the engagement with you, otherwise, there would be nothing for me. I was speechless, indeed. If Zhou Hao had not called off the engagement, my life would have followed the course of marrying him. I wouldn't have met Gu Qian, nor would I have become a female official. I suddenly felt like joking. If that were the case, what would you do? He looked forward, his eyes becoming distant. Then I might be just like him. For the rest of my life, I'd be chasing after someone unattainable.